guys, welcome to Cold Film and Review, the podcast where we discuss the films you love, but no one else gets, and we see if they still hold up. Tonight, we're taking possession to the next level, and then a level after that, because we're talking about The Exorcist 3, so let's start the show. Hey guys, thanks for joining the cult. We really appreciate it. Do us a favor, head over to iTunes, leave us a review. If you do, we will give you a shout out at the end of the show. We got one to do.
Shout out!
So make sure you stick around for that. And then when you're done with that, head over to cultfilminreview.com for all your cult film and review needs, like picking up a t-shirt, or maybe you want to check out some of those wacky rating boards that we do that Chris is whipping out and putting up on there.
So wacky.
Brand spanking new. And then join us September 13th because it's going to be so hot. We're going to be burning because we're talking about the burning. That's right. The burning will be at Phoenix Film Bar with us. Guys, Mike will be there signing my headshots.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you come out for that. It's September 13th. And they get tickets where, Chris?
Thefilmbarphx.com.
That is right. Tonight we are talking about Exorcist 3. But before we do, as always, I am joined by Kyle Smith.
Hey, how's it going?
Chris Willenberg.
Hey, what's up?
And Michael Salustio.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so we're talking about Exorcist 3. It was directed by William Peter Blatty. Blatty?
That sounds like a Blatty.
Yeah.
Blatty.
Yeah.
Oh, like Smatty.
Spelled how it sounds.
Like
Blatty.
Smatty.
It's
William-
Blatty.
Only
Smatty.
Only the hardcores will get Smatty.
I'm not one.
Yeah, you should be. William Peter Blatty, and he also wrote this. Came out in 1990. Had a budget of $11 million. Made $39 million in the box office. Currently has a rating of R.
I like he's like currently, like it's going to
Yeah.
change.
Could.
Like
You
the
never know.
NBA is going to just change. It's like now it's a
Unrated
PG-13.
edition.
With this, there is missing footage, apparently.
Yeah.
So
And currently sits at a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. This was Chris's pick. Chris, why'd you pick The Exorcist 3?
I picked this because
The
The
Gotta go with the
Exorcist
drop.
The Exorcist is probably one of the most famous franchises / horror films ever. And the sequels that follow the original Exorcist are interesting because number 2 is often like just totally not discussed or talked about because it's a terrible movie. And 3, I feel like has had sort of a resurgence. And I'll just say I did see this movie when I was younger. It was on television and I watched it and I just remember being bored to tears.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it had been, I've been seeing it pop up here and there. I'm like, we should revisit this movie and see what it has going for it, because obviously there's something here that people are latching on to.
Yeah. One thing I would like to argue
Mm.
on that, though, is I don't know if I would say it's one of the most popular franchises.
Well, I mean, like, you can say The Exorcist and people think the original film, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like the next two just kind of get thrown into
And
that.
Would you call Jaws a franchise?
Yeah.
It feels like the same situation there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
It's very
everybody,
similar.
everybody's thinking, yeah, that's the pinnacle, right? Jaws is like
Yeah.
this classic movie. And yeah, there was a second one. And yeah, there was a third one. And I think some people think there was a fourth one.
I think there was a fourth.
And then some other people are also thinking there might have been a fifth one.
No, that's just the ride.
Okay. So yeah, no, I feel like it's that kind of thing. I don't like
Yeah.
franchise.
I mean, come on, not every...
I mean, it's a franchise. It is a franchise.
It is.
but
It's
I'll
in
go-
the series.
I'll
They
okay?
did have a TV series too.
I'll go next because here's where
Go
I
next for what?
for answering.
Have you
we've
seen
seen this
this?
before because Chris already jumped in on that.
I
so
did.
I'm jumping in on it
Oh.
next.
Okay.
Get on it, Cody.
I didn't hear that setup.
So he set it up himself.
Okay.
I will say I've never seen this before. And here's where I say it's not the franchise, it's more just the solo movie. Because I was like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm super excited to watch Exorcist 3, The Heritage.
The Heritage.
Or whatever the fuck the one is called.
The Heretic, that's 2.
Is it Heretic? I thought it was Heritage. That also tells you how much I know about 2.
Mm.
I don't know anything about the sequels of The Exorcist.
And
And I would say The Exorcist is the most terrifying movie I've ever seen, and I've never heard a good thing, nor have I ever felt the urge to see a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you probably.
Because how do you top
wouldn't.
that? How do you
Yeah,
top one?
I don't know why. Why did people go watch Jurassic Park sequels?
listen, I mean,
Dinosaurs?
anybody that grew up in the
This is
video
devils,
store,
you know?
anybody that grew up in the video store, and went through the horror section, could obviously tell, oh, there's a 2 and a 3, and like I want to rent all of these. And I think, that it was the right time for that, even though it was, they weren't good or memorable. Like you wanted to see it as part of the series.
Kyle, did you want to see? I didn't want to see it as part of the series. Chris is just making this up in my childhood. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, this is my first time seeing this movie.
You didn't have that urge walking through the video store to see 2 and 3?
Honestly, what happened was I agree with you. Exorcist is probably, for me, one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. It wasn't until I don't know, I might have been like 16, 17 that I decided oh, yeah, maybe I should check out the sequel. And I think I watched like the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then I said, I definitely don't want to check out the third one.
Because it usually goes...
the second one put just a bad taste in the mouth.
It
so
usually
goes
the third one's usually not as good as the second,
Yeah, usually the second can rock some shit.
Yeah.
But it did not.
What about you, Mike? When did you see this, theaters?
I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it probably like 3 years ago. The third one, right? I had seen the second one.
Okay.
So
was it burning in your loins that you had to see?
No, not really.
Oh, just Chris, huh?
I'm a completionist, man. I want to see the whole series.
It wasn't so much that. I think it's kind of like what you're talking about, right? Like it was the assumption, just sheer assumption that this movie sucked.
Yeah.
And then one day it was like on TV, and I was like, "Oh, let me check out this bullshit." And then I was like, "Oh, all right." And we'll talk a little bit more about it on the show. But I understand where the resurgence is coming from. Let's just put it that way.
I could see it because it feels like the Halloween 3 of meaning like it's like, to me at least, because I haven't seen the other one, it's different, right? It's not really it's not.
Doesn't involve Reagan.
I really wouldn't call it. I wouldn't
really.
really call it an Exorcist film.
No, it wasn't. It originally wasn't meant to be.
It wasn't. It's supposed to be titled Legion,
and I agree with that 100%.
Because that's a great title.
I agree with that title 100%.
You know what this movie felt like
too.
to me when I was watching it? It felt like it could have existed in the same universe as Manhunter. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like this, it's like this detective story, this true crime detective story, but it ends up taking a supernatural turn, similar to I guess Fallen. It kind of has that same vibe to it too.
I will tell you what, man. The whole time watching this, and I don't want this to give away my review, but at all, and I don't think it will. But the whole time I was watching this, I was like, "Damn, dude, this movie would be awesome if they remade this." I just thought from the get go, it needed an update.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is, but that's just
You're right. It does feel like a lot of movies that can, even like The Cell. You know what I mean? It kind of is like this cop that's on this cop adventure that like you said, turns into a supernatural movie. It's a scenario, and it's.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Ahead.
I think it's because it
what
plays.
You said was well. Sorry.
It plays really well into that skeptic versus the woo woos out there. You know what I mean? Like a cop is a good example.
The woo woos?
Yeah, like when you're wooing somebody. It's called wooing. Woo. A lot of woo in the world.
The woo woos.
John Woo.
Magical shit. Okay, I'll put it that way.
John Woo too.
Yeah, no, that's a classic place for like a scientist, but like a detective's a good example too because he deals with real life shit.
I always loved that.
Yeah,
I always loved that idea of that's always been an idea of having back having a movie I would love to see is almost like a film noir style, but with a supernatural turn, like the detective. Because I don't know what it is. Maybe it as audiences for movies we've seen, we associate detectives as completely and totally grounded in reality, right? You have to. There's clues they're good at solving these crimes and finding the truth of it. So it's like when you throw them into these supernatural moments, I feel like that's such a cool energy and a cool vibe for a story.
Yeah.
And actually with the rise of all the true crime stuff going on, this film was heavily the Zodiac killings were not referenced necessarily, but used as inspiration for the Gemini killer in this film. And so you're seeing now this resurgence of all the serial killer true crime TV shows and stuff. And so maybe that's why you're this needs an update because it fits in with our interests right now.
I'd be stoked if this movie had an update and if they released it under the title of the book, Legion. Great.
All right. Well, you know what? People probably want to figure out what the fuck we're talking about. So it's time for Plots with Mike.
Okay, so Exorcist 3, it does actually have a little bit of a tie-in to the original. There is I believe it's Father Dyer, right? He's the best friend of George C. Scott, right?
Yeah,
so
Bill.
Father Dyer was friends with Father Karras. from the first movie.
Bill was friends with Father Karras.
Yeah, but I got the impression that Father Dyer was like super close friends, and he was kind of like
They both were friends.
Yeah.
I believe Bill says that Karras
Hold on,
was
let's
his
just get
best
through
friend?
this plot here before we start arguing.
Okay, so
this.
anyways.
Yeah, we always interrupt plots with Mike.
Anyways.
We shouldn't.
So that being said, after Father Karras passed away, Father Dyer started feeling really, really lonely, and George C. Scott's character, Lieutenant Kinderman, has always kind of kept him company to basically, because he knows that like he's an alone guy, sad now and stuff like that. So he always kind of on the eve of Karras's death, they kind of like go out and they reminisce and whatnot. And on this particular night, they're talking about philosophy, as they often are. And Kinderman is investigating these crimes because he went after this guy called the Zodiac Killer years ago. Gemini. God damn it. I'm going to do this all night long. The Gemini Killer all night. He's been chasing this guy, and he's this one detective with that weird theory that, like, he's not really dead. Like, that somehow he survived or whatever, because he's looking at these newer crimes and he's saying, hey, there's a little bit of resemblance here, and people are telling him you're just looking for shit, right? Turns out that he starts following these cases, and he ends up meeting a guy who claims he's the Gemini Killer, but looks just like his friend Father Karras. Turns out Father Karras, when he fell out of the window, the spirit of the Gemini Killer, who did actually die, inhabits Father Karras and now is possessed.
Yes.
And that's pretty much
the whole film there.
the whole thing. Well, I don't know how to get to the Exorcist part without explaining that.
Hey, so you guys
think
want
that's okay.
Do you guys want to rate this mammer-jammer?
Yeah, okay, so I give it
a
a 4. No. Go on.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about The Exorcist 3.
Yes, sir.
1, 2, 3.
And we're back. We're talking about Exorcist 3. Chris's pick, 1990, 11 million, made 39 million in the box office.
Success.
That is a success. That's the crazy thing. I guess when he came to the project, originally John Carpenter was approached to direct, and then he bowed out because they couldn't agree.
That sounds like John Carpenter.
And I can't help but watch this film and think, man, what it would have been if John Carpenter got a hold of this.
Would have been Prince of Darkness.
It would have been Prince of Darkness. Yeah.
That's
Exactly
really
what
funny.
it was.
Oh,
True.
you've seen that movie, Prince of Darkness? That's what it would have been.
Yeah, it would have been that exact film.
No one would have been smiling, I'll tell you that goddamn much.
No smiles on that set.
Although there is some in the mouth of madness going on in this film.
Yeah. It's almost like he like got approached to the project, read the script.
Yeah.
They didn't agree. He's like, I'm going to make 2 out of 1.
You have a good idea here and here. They're never going to work together. He leaves.
So-
What year did this movie come out?
1990, which it was written it was written in the 80s. So he originally wrote it as like a sequel for.
Well, he wrote it as a book.
Well, he wrote it as a sequel first. Then they turned down it. They didn't want it. Then he wrote it as a book, turned it into a book, and then turned it back into a movie after it was a best-selling book.
I'm getting my movie, goddammit.
And I don't think, and from what I read too, did not want to have it named Exorcist at all.
No, he didn't.
It's Legion. You want to name after the book, Legion.
This was a purely marketing at that time.
Oh, it totally was. It's like,
Yeah.
we need to get in on this. That's why there's like
so much
stuff that's shoehorned into it to
The
reference
priest
it
stuff.
back.
All the priest stuff.
All
is,
the exorcism stuff.
it's shoot in there. Yeah, the priest.
Oh, yeah. The whole Father Karras thing is like, you can tell it's like,
Well,
was this even shot in the same room? Like,
Yeah, it
Well,
seems like a
the Father
mistake.
I
It
think
seems like
the
an
Father
accident.
Karras stuff was
Father
was in the original thing, but the exorcism that
At the
happens
end.
at the end was not.
with the
and that was a huge battle. He didn't want to do it at all.
yeah the guy the priest Morning, when Morning comes in at the end,
right.
he was
Okay.
he was not in the movie.
But if he didn't want it to be an Exorcist movie, they wouldn't have had a Father Karras in it.
No,
true.
he didn't want it to be called Exorcist 3. He didn't want it to be a direct sequel. Its story is Legion.
Oh, but he wanted to exist in its world.
It's in the same world,
It's
yeah.
in the same
Oh,
world.
okay. I was on the impression
Yeah.
that he did not want to be associated with the franchise.
Oh no, this
Oh,
is
okay.
based off a book, which is a sequel to his book,
Yeah, this
or in the
is-
same world.
It's in the same universe, and Kinderman, the lieutenant, is from Exorcist. Even though he has, I guess he has a small part in the movie.
He was a cop when Father Karras died. He was like there at the scene or whatever. Right?
Yeah, I never. I
Yeah.
guess he has a bigger part in the book. I've never read the book, but from what I read, is he has a bigger part in the book. And he's like the correlation into this movie now is passed over to
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
And he's now investigating this case, and that's why it all involves Father Karras and Patient X and all that stuff.
And this completely ignores the second film of the series.
Doesn't exist.
It has to.
apparently.
Yeah, that's what I was
What
thinking
is
too.
the second film?
The
Real? Can
Heretic.
anybody give me a quick
It's the
rundown?
continuation
Yeah.
of Reagan's story
Yeah.
and what happens like after the fact when she goes and gets like a bunch of testing done, and it's just it's not.
Did she get
memorable.
possessed again?
I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film since I was a kid. I don't know.
I've never seen it, so I couldn't tell you. And then so and George C. Scott steps in here as Kinderman. And he's not the original actor. The original actor unfortunately passed away before they filmed this movie. But George C. Scott steps in as the actor, and I think he is awesome in this movie.
Okay, yeah.
I just have one problem, and that's his age. Did he seem like he's just too old for the role to anyone else, or was it just me?
No.
No, he seemed like he was like on his last couple of years as a cop.
Dude, I was like, this motherfucker's in his 70s. Like, that's how I felt. Like,
No, he looked like he was in his like 50s or 60s.
I mean, I guess I liked that though. I didn't have a problem with it.
I liked it because there was a great dynamic that played off the other cops that he was on his team, the younger guys.
I just didn't like his daughter felt like too young for me. Like, I just wasn't. His wife felt too young for me. He just felt too old for the role. Not saying like for those aspects in the role. When those aspects came around, I was just like, you guys are taking me out of the movie. When we're in the hospital and he's doing his police work and stuff like that, totally bought in. 100% bought in.
Yeah.
It's just those family moments that really take me
luckily
out.
those
not
are
a
few
lot of
and far
family
between.
moments. Yeah, I was gonna say you get it like at the beginning and then at the end, and that's pretty much it for his family.
You know, as far as his character goes, that's how when I kept on watching this, I was like, this is something that I would change if I had a chance to remake this film.
What, recast?
I would recast him as definitely as a younger.
I didn't have a problem with this at all.
I wouldn't
didn't.
say
I'm still
I
watching George C. Scott act.
Yeah,
Like,
I wouldn't
so-
say younger. I would say just maybe it's just George C. Scott. Like I don't know. I think in the 50 to 55 or 50 to 60 is a good age for this character because it gives him plenty of history and backstory. 15 years ago, okay, this is believable. He'd be like in his prime as a detective solving these murders, and like making him I don't know. I think making him older and having a younger team around him kind of makes him feel like a wiser and stronger character as well. I loved George C. Scott in this role.
No, I liked him too in this role. I just felt like it was hard. It was hard to buy in just because I was like, man, you're fucking old. Like, Jesus Christ, when you got blown up against that wall, you would have broke a hip. You would have fucking broke a
He was
hip.
pretty stocky, man.
No, Chris.
No.
I don't get it, man. You watch 7-year-olds beat the shit out of each other in a ring all day long, and you're mad at fucking George C. Scott. Fucking,
Like,
why can't you give George C.
do it?
It
What are
could
you
have
talking
been
about, dude? Wrestlers be wrestling until they're like 60.
Not anymore. They used to, but not anymore.
Yeah, and you didn't have a problem with it back then.
No,
you were like,
look,
oh, fuck yeah,
I'm-
Hogan's back.
I'm basing this on the fact.
Dude's like 90.
I do it now. I do
You're
it now.
right now at Raw. Were you not fucking hoping that he was going to be like, oh yeah, and there's a chair's going to get pulled out and he's going to come back to the ring?
Yeah.
You did.
It didn't feel unbelievable to me. It just
Because
didn't.
Hulkamania is still running wild.
Still
Okay?
talking about Hulkamania.
reality of it.
Kinderman is not running wild.
Okay, all right. He's
You
the
know?
Hulk Hogan of this
When-
neighborhood. though.
Listen, when he walks into the fucking ward of old people and he looks the same age as all of them in there,
Man, give him a break.
that doesn't play well, man. It doesn't. That's all I'm
I
saying.
thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
I was just
Oh,
taking.
I didn't think anything
Yeah.
of that.
I did.
I was
Not
just
a bit.
taking
couldn't
it
help
like
but think it.
he's a pretty good actor. Like that, I was more impressed with like some of his performance.
I couldn't help but
Yeah.
think it.
I liked his.
Listen,
I
it
liked
took,
his.
it took away from his performance.
I not at all for me at all. I thought his performance was great. His when he would like his little dialogues that he had and shit, like it just felt so. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I don't feel like I've seen enough George C. Scott films, but like the certain ones I've seen, it's like, yeah, that guy's actually a really fucking amazing actor.
Well, yeah.
And then when you see it, it's funny
He's
because
kind of known for it.
yeah, for sure. But it's obviously not watching his entire collection, his repertoire of films. When you see it, it's delightful.
Well, let's get past our like or dislike for George C. Scott.
I do want to say something about George C.
I'm
Scott.
not saying that I
though.
dislike him. I'm not saying I dislike him.
I do want to say that he's got a real Pacinoism going on
Does he?
in
I
this
thought,
film
like,
that I
Kirk
never
Douglas-
noticed until this point. Like, no, like what I mean by like the Pacinoism, like there was a whole moment where Pacino just started going ha, and then like that he became a character.
Sure.
Like George C. Scott, his bursts of anger are so unwarranted.
They
and
are.
go so from 0 to 60 so fast.
But then back down to 0.
and like and like for little things, like what do you mean you don't have these goddamn spoons?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, just like what? Where did that come from?
Maybe it was like William Blatty letting George C. Scott just go off the rails. Like he's like, just try something. And
I
he's
definitely bet you. I bet you George C. Scott walked in and was like, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want to
You
do.
think he did like?
probably.
And they were like, okay, George.
Yes, George.
No, I believe that. And again, it warranted.
I think there's freedom on the set with the actors because if you go to Brad Dourif's character as the Gemini killer, I mean, they give him a lot of fucking room to do whatever he wants to do.
Ooh, man. I'll tell you what. Listen, it was entertaining, and I might be the one on here that people disagree with the most here.
I already know where you're gonna go, and probably
Go
yeah.
ahead. It's all right.
The scene where they're in the cell together.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, what, the back half of the movie?
Yeah,
what are you
dude.
talking about?
That's again where this movie I feel like again could go with a remake, and I feel like they bottlenecked themselves too much in that fucking hospital.
Yeah.
And too much like for a Legion, it's like 2 people in a fucking hospital. And that's a little bit of the problem with it. It's not big enough in scope. And this hospital in that fucking room, man, when you have a 15-minute scene in there, or at least that's what it felt like. I don't know how long that scene is, but it felt like 15 minutes. It's
Which
a long
Which one?
scene.
Which
The
scene?
first their first meetup when he punches him in the nose.
Gotcha.
That
That's
scene
cute meat.
Mhm.
that scene goes on. Not that it's bad. It just goes on too long. Like I lost interest. Like halfway through it.
That's so that's so weird because I feel like in that that scene and all these other scenes, like I feel like Brad Dourif does a great thing of he's like kind of like, and I'm sure a lot of this is special effects in the back end, but just the way that he modulated his mannerisms, his voice, his tone, everything, that it felt like he was seamlessly slipping between different personalities during the conversation, and that kept it going for me.
Yeah, I thought if we're going to talk about his performance, I liked that. I always think about how hard it is to be scary, you know, for a person to be scary. And a lot of what Brad Dourif's doing is he's reciting these monologues directly into the camera. And so he has to like actually try to capture his audience and scare his audience. And it's just like the most basic thing possible. You're just looking in a camera. And I feel like he did terrify me in some circumstances, but there were also other moments where, you know, it was kind of like corny, laughable.
Oh, I would say this movie, again, first Exorcist to me, probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. This movie was like, I would put this on the same level as like I think maybe Kyle said it before, is like the same level as like a Silence of the Lambs, where it's not really like scary.
I said Manhunter, but
Manhunter, same, yeah, Hannibal Lecter type character. You know what I mean? Where it's not
I
really
will agree with
scary.
that. I'll say this: if we're knocking points off of the film, we're knocking it down right now. I will say that it could have done with. I would have been happy to see more activity at the hospital. Like, so the one scene I think is the only real jump scare in this movie is when the night worker nurse gets attacked by the old woman in the gown, and it's like it's such a great shot. The door closes, and the second it closes, all of a sudden, boom, she's behind. She's like walking through that door again. Like that was a great jump scare. And the film, I felt like, here's the thing, I felt like the film spent a lot of moments building the tension for a good scare that never happened.
But that's what part of what I felt was scary about it. I was almost comparing some of these intense scenes to some of the shit you'd see now in like Hereditary or even Conjuring, where it's just like, let's take that scene where you get that first element of possession where the old woman is in the confession booth and the priest is talking, and it's just pushing into a darkness, you know, just blackness, and you just hear this voice starting to morph slowly into this familiar demonic voice that you've probably heard in like the original Exorcist, you know. And I'm like, man, that's some like fucking A24 shit that they would do now, you know? It's like to build that scare in the psychology and like the claustrophobia of that scene, of the darkness of that scene.
I think that I disagree with maybe not Chris. I can't tell right now. I think this is the best part of the fucking movie. Like, I think Brad Douriff acts the shit out of this.
He does.
Like,
Yeah.
it's really good. And the amazing thing about it is, I didn't catch it the first time I had seen it, but I caught it now. I'm like, shit, man. Like, this is so eloquent and stuff, but he's just like talking exposition.
Yeah.
Like, all of it is like he's explaining how. Well, here's how I got into Father Karras's body. Like, it's just a whole step-by-step story, but he does it so with such eloquence and like poetry, and he's doing such a good job, just like fucking looking insane and crazy and frightening that like it's like a trick. It's like a sleight of hand. It's like at the end of that, I always feel like it's like a good magic trick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, you made that shit interesting. Good job.
I also
guys.
love that. I
but-
love through all these scenes he has like a tear. He looks like he's crying as he's
Oh,
saying
yeah.
it. It was like what a
I'm telling
nice
you right
little
now,
added little
There's
piece.
no way Brad Douriff didn't go in this and was like, I'm gonna fucking destroy this shit. Like, he looks like he's bringing all his A game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the problem I'll agree with Cody is we spend too much time on that, and I think it wears off. Like, and it's not like there's
100%.
But I
some.
gotta say something though, guys. Like, I know it doesn't have as much action as the original Exorcist, but a lot of the Exorcist is fucking talking.
It is.
I agree. No, I don't disagree with that. But man, you want to talk? This is a talkie film.
Okay.
This is a talkie.
You can't
That's what I
spend.
would
It's
call
hard
it.
to spend 10 minutes in the same location, just going back shot back and forth, like
Mhm.
between two
It
characters.
is very hard, and to keep interest.
Yeah, but I agree. I don't know if I agree or disagree, but I did think the scares were effective in this movie. Like, not only just like the slow burn scares, but also like the jump scare you were talking about, and the what they did. I think they actually borrowed from the original Exorcist that quick zoom on something. So when you said like, you know, the white nun comes out or I think it's a nun or a
No, it's
patient
just
or
a
whatever.
patient and a-
Oh yeah. that
Like,
was
and
sheet.
it pans in or it zooms in really fast on that hit, and it's
Yeah.
so effective. And they do a lot of that kind of stuff in here,
Yeah, I
where
did
it's
like that.
it catches you off guard in a weird way,
It
in a
needed-
very weird way.
It needed more of it though. Like it had some great moments in there where it really brought the creepiness, but I felt like it was focused on the case too much.
Yeah, it needed more. I
Well,
agree.
Yeah,
no,
that's kinda the part I like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
sorry.
like that part too. I like that it is a detective film. The thing is, and you know, I think Chris brought up like A24. Like, yeah, these kind of slow burn things is reminiscent of current films. But the thing with those is you usually get some sort of real punch you in the balls type of ending that really relieves all that tension that built up. And this film doesn't quite have that massive, like, holy shit type of thing that happens. So I think I love the slow burn. I love building tension. It something that makes me feel dread while watching a movie is wonderful. But there needs to be, I think, a few more payoffs in this film that we're missing.
You also see none of the kills. None of like anything
Yeah.
that happens. It always cuts out to the next
I was a
scene.
little-
I mean, one of the most gruesome kills, I think, is definitely not. But
What was
when
the-
he's peeling off the ceiling,
Oh,
that was
yeah.
pretty.
Oh, yeah.
That
Well,
was pretty
and I would
gnarly,
say,
yeah.
that was cool. But you were waiting a long time to get something
Well, that's
like
the
that.
first time you see like really any gore. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Except maybe, and she doesn't get her head cut off, but that the slice of those shears.
Dude, how
Again, that's the
Ooh.
horror I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
like nothing
Yeah,
happens,
that'd
but
be
it's the
dull as fuck.
tension, you
Yeah.
know?
that blade is the dullest blade ever, dude. I was like, how did it not even scratch her?
It's the shining. Oh my God, it gets right there.
You see
Yeah, I
the special
think it's
effect of
effective.
like the skin like drags.
It's okay.
I was like,
Oh, Jesus Christ!
the
guys.
the idea of just that imagery alone. Can I just say, while we're on that
Yeah.
imagery, I think the cinematography is really
I do
the
too.
shining star of this movie. If we're gonna like,
No,
the
dude.
acting is good.
I agree.
You know, the sound is good. The story, in my opinion, is a little whatever. But like the cinematography, you can tell from shot to shot, like somebody really thought about
Okay,
this.
I mean, I know it's not my favorite scene in it because I said it goes on too long. Even though people they're trying to act their ass off in that, and they are. It's just the way that lighting is through those two windows and how it lights both of them is just fucking
Yeah.
amazing.
It is.
That whole scene is just like framed perfectly. Yeah, I agree. The cinematography is great. I wish there was a little bit more of the element of the horror in there, rather than so much focusing on Kinderman and maybe the case and the relationships that he had with these people. I get that you have to tie that in because that's where the terror comes from. You know, it really is this cop dealing with like basically losing his friends to whatever this entity is, and kind of coming to grips that it does exist. You know. I get that that's what it is, but it's just it needs it needed more of the supernatural element. It wasn't scary, and then when they did try to shoehorn that shit in at the end, it fucking kind of ruined it.
See that you're talking about the what? The what part?
The exorcism at the end of the film.
And
Okay.
that's the part that was shoehorned in that,
Yeah.
that
Well, see,
was
it
not
just
supposed to be in the
it
film.
doesn't fit.
Okay, yeah, because I'm wrong on this, but I still think that the whole Father Karras thing. I remember at the end of this film, the first time and even this time, I was like, why do they even need to have that? Like, why do they have to explain it? Like, they try such a hard job of trying to be like, this is connected to the first one, like that. It felt weird to me.
Well, I mean, the base of the story is it's just the ultimate like payback. That's really all it comes down to, is that the main spirit, we'll just assume it was Pazuzu, thought there's no better way to get back at the people that just forced me out of this body than to possess the priest that did it,
Right.
and then use him to wreak more havoc.
Yeah.
You know, so from that element, I actually appreciate that. That's more like malicious, like it's a more malicious act.
It kind of felt, but to me, it felt soap opera-y. You know what I mean? Like when like a person would die and they come back and they'd be like, "It wasn't me. It wasn't a brain tumor." Like,
Can I be honest with you?
it felt like there was a lot to get him to come back, to get Father Karras back into
Well,
this.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I agree with you 100%. And I'll give you the example of where I agree with you, because I felt like I was like, "You're a fucking demon. What's the science behind this shit?" He's like, "Well, he had a lot of brain damage, and I had to rebuild his brain."
like
Okay, that
fuck
part I'll
outta
agree.
here.
That part was a
and
little too
explain like his X-Men power.
That's
It was like
why-
fucking weird.
That's why it took me 17 years to come back.
With
I
that type
thought
of
that too,
cellular
and I was like,
degeneration.
I was like, really? So 15 years is what it takes to repair a brain?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
For a demon, I'm like, "What are you guys doing, man? We gotta get these guys in the doctor."
Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like the whole time I'm listening to that part and I'm thinking to myself, or like just like make it not around Karras. Like
Yeah.
this could have just happened
But
anywhere.
No, but no,
Like,
it had to go around Karras, right? Well, he thought it had to go around Karras because he was connecting the K names. Because because
I
of
thought that was
no, but they
kinda
didn't
weird.
have to
No,
even go that way.
that's not weird, because I guess in the novel, from what I understand, spoiler, in the novel and in the original script, what it was how the demon, basically, or Gemini like demon, went away was the father that he was so much hated, the killer, and his reason for killing passes away of a heart attack. So
Right.
the demon's like, cool, I can pass on now.
Because that pain is gone.
Yes, because
Yeah.
there's no reason to kill anymore. His driving motive of his father
Yeah.
not being,
It's not a problem for him anymore
Anymore.
because his father's
Father
dead. Yep. Okay.
So that's
All
kind of
right.
where it went with the original.
We
that's,
can't-
that's a cool book ending. Like
Yeah.
We
I don't think it
can't.
would work on film, though. Do you
I
think
don't
that
know.
would
Like,
work on film?
like again, I think the Father Karras thing would make more sense in a book. Like, I bet you if I was reading a book, I'd be like, "Oh, cool, man! They're bringing back Karras and they're explaining how that happened." Like in a book, it makes
Yeah.
sense to explain these long
Mhm.
treks into things. You go back
It
and
is
forth in
kinda-
time. In this one, it just felt like
It's kind of hard to believe. Like, well, he was the cop that found him dead at the end of the first one, but then like he didn't die and he is alive.
Well, they said he crawled out of the casket. So it's like,
that. Yeah, it's
I
just,
don't know. I'm
It's a
just
lot
saying.
of explaining.
I agree. I agree. It definitely felt. It definitely felt choppy. Let's say that it wasn't a very smooth.
Yeah.
Story point.
I
you
want
know?
to know if maybe it was not a good idea for Blatty to direct his own story. Maybe it would have come out differently. If
I don't think it was.
Yeah, like he's too close
really?
to it,
Yep.
and he wanted to keep too much in. And it's
Dude,
110
that
minutes.
is
It's 110 minutes. It could definitely be shorter.
After I was watching, dude, and I don't think they did enough. Like, I don't think they focused enough on building like the tension. Like everyone kept on saying tension. I was just like, I just see an old guy who's fucking getting angry.
What? There's some great
Yeah,
shots
there's a lot of
tension
great
in this
shots
movie.
where
man.
it's just like, what's gonna happen?
The
What's gonna
fucking-
happen?
We haven't even talked about the old grandma crawling around on the roof.
No, we haven't. But and that's like technically that's great, but I didn't find it creepy at all.
You didn't
What the
find-
fuck?
I
That's like
thought
the creepiest part.
I thought it was.
Dude, by then, can I
Fucking
tell you
old
something?
lady climbing on the thing.
By then, I was so fucking bored out of my mind.
I don't
Here
know.
it comes.
I was so fucking bored out of my mind. They could have taken a shit on screen, and I would have fucking noticed.
I will say that when the
Jeez.
granny turns her head around, she ends up looking like the Six Flags mascot.
What the fuck is that? Yeah.
I was like, Jesus Christ, that's just
Okay.
like some. It's like
We didn't even mention like the credit sequence in the beginning. I thought that alone had tension when it's just creeping down that street. You see the kid standing in the corridor, and you're like, "That's weird." And then it just keeps going down that dark street.
And there's that priest running, sprinting up and down the street.
You're on edge already because you're like, "This is like sucked me into this weird." And then the kid shows up again at the end of the street. You're like, "All right." Like to me, that really like set the tone of what this movie is, which is slow burn kind of horror.
That and like even though I thought the scene was a little goofy, but George C. Scott's character's his dream when he's in Heaven's waiting room.
We should talk about
we have
that
to talk
scene.
about that scene because that is all the people that
cameo
are
filled.
up there makes no sense. It's like sports stars
Samuel
and
Jackson.
fucking like poets and shit.
Fabio,
Up in heaven.
Yeah.
Why is that? That
Patrick
makes sense.
Ewing.
Patrick Ewing's there. Larry King is there. Fabio is there.
You're just talking about the
Just the casting. But like, we're talking about a cast of people where it's like,
the Fabio one seems really weird.
Dude,
they're so recognizable characters that you're looking at it like.
it felt goofy as fuck.
But here's the thing. It's not shot anyways goofy. And Patrick Ewing is kind of scary as a fucking angel of death.
I feel like the way that it's shot straight like that, though, is what kind of made it. I don't know. It just felt like the whole thing with the celebrities in there just fell out of place.
You know what's funny though? Here's the thing, guys.
Spiced up the movie.
Because they were
a little bit.
all
Here's the
well
thing,
known
guys.
at the time.
Didn't even notice the celebrities in there. Me.
Well, you didn't.
I did not even notice.
You didn't
Really?
notice any of the celebrities. You didn't see
Nope.
Fabio.
You didn't have cable.
The only one I noticed was Fabio, and I thought, why the fuck's Fabio in this?
Did you
And
watch
that
a lot
was
of basketball? Patrick Ewing is like his face is like burning my head.
No, I didn't.
for
I didn't
real.
watch a lot of
For real.
basketball, but I didn't notice Larry King. It was funny when I was watching the credits. I was like, when the hell was he in this movie? I think I was more mesmerized by like how bizarre that scene was.
But
It's
that-
a very bizarre scene.
Well,
but
see, that brings up a good point.
Go
I
on.
think that this film, oddly enough, comparative to the second one, where this one's, or sorry, the third one, or the first one, Jesus Christ, is that the first one didn't really have like any humor to it, where this one has like a little sense of humor.
I guess between like the priest and
The priest
Kinderman,
is fucking
Kinderman.
funny, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, their whole banter back and forth is. I could watch that for fucking
They're
days.
like the odd
great.
couple. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Super fun.
I don't know. Did you think that he was doing it for comedy?
Yes.
There's a part of me that kind of felt like, man, that's like how a real dream is, though.
And we're talking about the dream still.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
You're
I
saying
thought it was
that,
done for like a
that
like
the dream casting all these people was a comedy
Someone-
thing.
was
Were you
someone-
No,
implying
we were
that?
just talking about
I know what
their
he was talking
interaction.
about.
So we were separate from the
No,
dream.
Were
that-
you saying
yes, I am.
also?
Also
okay.
is what
yeah,
I'm saying.
okay.
Yes.
Um,
And it does have a comedic element
like
to it.
I took it
feels
as
out
like
of place.
that was like a real fucking dream. Like I was like, that's the most like accurately shot dream. That it's only in a dream you're just like, here's my friend and he's dead. Patrick Ewing, what are you doing here? like it's so weird. Like I actually took it as no, like these are people that like are actual celebrities in his time and he's recalling
Mm-hmm.
in his brain or something.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's a good point. Yeah.
I almost just thought it was like a cheap play for like just to get some
Something.
people in there.
Oh, it legit
Samuel
is, though.
Jackson has a line in here, but it's dubbed. Like it's not his actual voice.
And so why the
But Samuel Jackson's
why the fuck are
not.
all these
Keep in mind,
motherfucking
Samuel Jackson is
angels?
not Samuel Jackson right now.
No,
Right.
no.
I think he's just a.
I like how George C. Scott, Kinderman, just like they slowly leak you how he's figuring out that it's actually the Gemini killer. Like they don't tell you right off the bat. You see him doing weird things. He checks out the body. You know, he looks under the cover on the left side, the right side, and then at the head. And you're like, why is he doing that? You know, like, why is he looking at it like that? And then later you find out that the Gemini killer had specific things that he did, which we kind of touched on earlier, but the public actually didn't know the real things. Like they changed it so that they could really identify who it was, you know, because there's always bogus people
Bro,
claiming crimes and
I
stuff.
wish-
This part of the movie killed me
All right.
What? Why?
because it was the most repetitive excuse used over and over again. Like every time something would happen, he would just fall on that. Listen, we never released this to the public, so don't ever repeat this again. The Gemini killer, we knew he wore a dress.
What do you do?
Oh, guess
this
what?
literally
Listen.
happened in like one scene.
No, dude, it's in fucking multiple scenes.
It's in one
is?
scene.
Yes,
I
it's
thought
in
it was one
multiple
scene.
scenes.
I feel like it's one scene. People ask him
Cody
a lot
had a
about.
bad time watching this movie.
No.
Jesus.
We kept watching that scene over and over again.
So when Karis goes off about the fucking girl that he killed and the dress that she wore, That was the first time. There was another time when he explains about the fingers. Guys, it's brought up fucking 7 or 8 times. By the 9th time, it's fucking boring.
7, 8. You mentioned 2.
No. But he reveals.
I can keep going. Do you want me to just go through the whole fucking
go
movie?
for
Because
it.
it's the whole fucking
Hold
movie.
on. He reveals more and more about
So
what
ridiculous.
he knows about that case. It's not like he just keeps repeating the same line.
No,
over
but
and over
that's how
again.
it starts out. As he reveals, every time he reveals something about the case, it always starts out with, "We didn't let the public know this." The fuck, you didn't let we told
So
the public
what?
wrong
I
don't know. I feel like
everything.
a lot of
It was
movies
the
do
whole
that.
fucking-
I feel
but
like
it
a
was
lot of
every
movies do
piece
that.
of information that came out. That's how it started.
That would
Alright.
that's such an
There
exaggeration.
was a lot of exposition in this movie, and Brad Dourif's character does it the entire time. Like, I mean, I feel like how this movie is presented to us is like, here's more information that we're gonna sprinkle to the
in that,
viewer.
by the way, in that way, I do think you're right
Here's more
about
talking.
What's that?
maybe the author shouldn't have been. Maybe
He-
oh, was
he's-
it you?
yeah.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
I agree.
yeah,
maybe-
he's
yeah.
filming it like his book.
I
Right,
agree.
and it's like, well, this
reads.
part is very
Yeah.
vital to this. I got to put this in the script, and
Yeah.
somebody's like a screenwriter's like, no, you
Right.
don't do that. Like,
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe that was a small issue with the storytelling of this movie.
I don't disagree with that.
And the entertainment value, I should say, of the movie more so than the storytelling.
Yeah, I think where the entertainment value is honestly it comes from, for me at least, comes from the performances, because I may not like the material so much, but man, I'll tell you what, from top to bottom, the people that are in this movie act their asses off. I don't know what the name of that fucking creepy ass fucking nurse
I'm
was.
glad
who
you brought her
who
up.
I
Yeah,
thought
she
was
was
going to
good
be
too.
evil the whole fucking time.
Is that Nurse X?
X gonna
No,
give
wasn't
it
her
to
name
you.
Julie?
Nurse Blaine, Nurse Marin. I don't know. There's
Wasn't it? It's the same name as his
Shirley.
daughter. It's the same name as his daughter. Shit.
Nurse Allerton.
Is there a nurse Shirley listed on here? I don't see one.
there's a
Yeah.
Barbara Baxley. That's his daughter, right? Shirley.
Okay,
And you're saying there's another nurse called Nurse Shirley?
Nurse Blaine, Nurse Blaine. I don't know.
Anyways,
Whatever.
You know her. She's the one that brings the bag in. You think it's going to be to kill that fucking little kid, but turns out it's just toys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, her whole look. You think she's possessed?
Dude, you think
like-
she's
yeah.
You think she's part of the Legion the whole time. I was
Yeah.
like, you bitch.
I thought
know
I,
She's
you
gonna
the
turn
are.
only thing
anyway.
I the thing
She's so
thing I
she's
thought
so
about
good.
her is she was like unnecessarily like unhelpful.
Can I say something?
You know?
That's why I knew she couldn't be part of the Legion.
Because she was just so unhelpful.
Because she was so like clearly like no, she just like legit hates George C. Scott, like
Or her job. She's just
or
like
either her job or her life. Yeah, like she's just doesn't fucking give a fuck. And I feel like the Legion is too ingrained in trying to manipulate you. And she's just clearly like, I just don't fucking care. I want to go home and don't touch my shit.
but it comes off as I might stab you at any moment.
Yes!
We don't know.
I actually don't
she
get
walks
that.
that line. I agree with
Yeah,
Chris on
she
this
does.
one.
She does because I mean, some people just play characters and you're like, you just know they're bad right when you see them.
Dude, I was
you're just
wait-
like,
Yep.
something's gonna fucking happen with you. I don't know what it is.
As
but-
soon as I saw her, I said, she's going to have a German accent.
See, I think she's
I
more
know
of a,
she's gonna
she's
have
not
one.
evil. She's just an asshole.
She's just an asshole. But that's what she is. She's just an asshole. But the whole time you're like, oh, well, if you're being an asshole, you got to be.
No, man. Most movies, it's always like there's an asshole in a room, and that's definitely not the killer.
Yeah.
If there's some like weird asshole and he's just an asshole all the time, you're like, that's not the bad
But that's
guy.
also
the
the-
villain's smarter than
But
that.
that's kind of also our hero. He's not saying like that he is, like, I don't know, I guess he kind of is intentionally an asshole, but he's a lovable asshole. Like, Kinnaman's kind of like, because he just has those outbursts. Like, if you think about it, man, he's kind of a rude fucker.
he might be an alcoholic. We don't know.
No, you never see him take a drink in the movie.
No, he does.
no, you never did.
Well, he has it with the father after they figure out like because the one priest that he goes to be like, they're saying that
no, he
this-
offers him a drink. He's like, no.
Yeah, but
Oh, does he
that
now?
priest is
Oh, okay.
drinking like crazy because
Oh,
he
yeah,
knows he
Well,
knows.
shit, I like that scene because it's just like they're sitting there and then all of a sudden you start hearing weird creaks and cracks and
Oh.
stuff, and the priest is just like slams that whole glass like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Not this again.
Yeah, there's some subtle stuff like that. A
Yeah.
lot of the sound design in this movie I thought was effective, and it actually definitely made the movie scarier.
And you're definitely,
Yeah.
and they're definitely harkening back to what they did in
Yeah.
the first one.
Yes.
Like I think that's a that's a
especially
big-
with like sound design in this
Oh
film.
yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, sound design 100%.
I will say the one thing that I really wish I got to see and I just never saw in this movie was a body with a statue in place of its head. Like they kept talking about that.
And they never show it.
And you never see it.
They
It's
do
just-
see it. No, you do see it.
At the end.
Yeah, at the very end.
Yep.
He talks about the one with it was painted like blackface.
Well, that's with
Yeah,
the kid.
That's right.
It was
the
the
only
kid.
time you ever
It was
see.
the 12-year-old kid,
Yeah.
which is
That
yeah.
rises up through the
Yes.
floor
Yeah.
on the cross. Was he on the cross or
Yeah,
was there?
he was on the
It was
oars.
the oars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Because it was in Georgetown where they filmed this. That he demanded Billy demanded that the film be shot there.
Can I
Billy.
just say, like, watching the Exorcist movies, it makes me want to live in Georgetown because it looks like the creepiest fucking place at night. All this fog and like, I know it's lit to be this way, but like, I mean, it's just everything's so old and historic. It looks like fucking, the Headless Horseman could come riding through at any fucking moment. Like, I want to move there.
Yeah.
So guys, make sure you check out your neighborhood if you're living in Georgetown because Chris will be coming through.
Yeah. Ichabod Crane himself.
Ichabod Chris.
It's like wearing like a jack-o'-lantern mask and shit.
I
Like,
love it.
running around town. They're like, he thinks that's fucking Halloween,
That's
but
what
it's
I need
not.
I need to be that for Halloween this year, Ichabod.
I
All right,
think
guys.
he thinks this is Halloween Town.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about The Exorcist 3. All right, Chris, what are we rating this mammer-jammer?
We're going to rate this Bill Blatties.
Bill Bloody.
Yep. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
All right, let's start with Mike.
I'm gonna give this a 4. The first time I saw this film, I was like, "Holy shit, this is really good!" Like, I was super into it. I thought that it did a lot. No, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's as good as the original, but it actually was a surprisingly solid like entry, in my opinion. And I liked the acting in it. I thought all the weird shit in it. I thought the dream sequence was fucking off the fucking walls bonkers, and I love that about the film. And the only thing I would say that kind of bugs me a little bit is like the ending to me. It's got one of those like how do I put it? Like it's like that Event Horizon ending. Like it's creepy for like all but the last 10th of the film. Like everything blows up and like heaven or hell comes out from the ground. And for me that was a little too much. Like I felt like I was like, that's a real spectacle. I don't really need all that stuff. But otherwise, man, I think it's a film that everybody should check out and not just assume it might suck because it bears the name of a classic.
For Fatty Bladdies. How many Bladdies am I going to give it? Man. I'm going to go.
Just go one like you want to.
No, I'm going to go 2 Bladdies. I'm going to go 2 Bladdies on this one.
Bladdies.
Bill Blatties.
2 Fatty Bladdies
It's
on
not just
this
any
one.
bloody.
Man. So going into it blind wasn't a smart choice because I wish I had background on the film beforehand. Because going into it, I'm expecting an Exorcist film, and coming out of it, that's not what I got. What I got was an old guy walking around a hospital that he looked like he might be a part of, trying to solve a case. Real Nancy Drew situation going on here. Although it's shot well and stuff like that, I never felt scared once in this film like the original. The original broke me to my fucking core and made me have some sleepless nights. This movie put me to sleep. It's boring. It's a talkie. It's a great film if you like exposition and you like to see actors really hone their craft, but not a lot of action and not a whole lot going on. It just drags. Shot well, sound design's good, technical aspect, great film. Otherwise from that, I think this could use an update, and I think this could be a very terrifying film if it did. I think if they focused more on the supernatural element more than the disbelief of it, I think, and gave into it a little bit more, I think it would be a lot better film. So I'm going to be at 2 for Exorcist 3. Kyle?
I'm coming in at a 4 on this one, and quite honestly, I believe the opposite of most of what you said, Cody. Like, here's the thing. I agree Exorcist is probably one of the scariest films I've ever seen. I really appreciate the fact that they did not try to go 100%. We're going to recreate the original. They brought it into, they introduced a new element, which was the detective drama, grounding it in even more sense of reality. And I love the interaction of George C. Scott and Brad Douriff in this film. I think those scenes are done well. I think Brad Douriff is an amazing actor in this film, and he really pulls off his very, very long lines of dialogue. Now, I do agree there is one or two moments I think Mike pointed out where he's like, explaining the science behind him coming back to life. It's like, that's not necessary right now because I don't care. I just love the fact that you're a walking corpse. Like, let's just keep it at that. Overall, I think this movie is shot wonderfully. I think it is a nice entry into the Exorcist world because I don't know if I could handle two films being equally as scary. I'm happy with my life having just one Exorcist that scares the shit out of me, and this is a fun watch for me. So I'm going to come in at a 4. Billy Blatties.
Chris.
I'm coming in at a 3 Bill Blatties. I do enjoy this movie a lot for the technical aspect of it. I think the cinematography is great. The lighting's great. The scares did work on me, even like more so than I remember seeing it younger. I definitely got drawn in more into the suspense of the film. I do like the cop drama about it too. I think that it is a little long and has too few instances of scares and tension, and we have to wait too long to start seeing some like real intense action, I feel like, and it's really shoved in at the end there with some effects that are fun to watch, yes, but definitely in my opinion don't hold up. There, like Mike said, there's some off the wall scenes and definitely some moments you can pull out of this film that I think could be considered iconic. The lady climbing on the ceiling. But yeah, overall too long. I do lose interest. It is a little boring, little too much exposition. I don't think Brad Douriff is always solid. I think there are some moments where it's like, okay, like it's worn off on me now. And then a little confusing as well, him changing back and forth from Brad Douriff to, Jason, I think it's Jason Alexander who plays Father Karras. Going back and forth, those characters, I'm like, is it Jason?
It's Jason. I don't know if it's Jason Alexander.
Jason Miller.
Jason
Miller. God
Jason
damn.
Miller.
Jason Alexander from Seinfeld.
Showing up again.
Fucking
Can I
First
just say
fucking
something?
George.
That would have been an awesome fucking film.
Yeah.
Well, if you want,
Sorry, Jason Miller.
Chris is playing his recast game right now.
Yeah, Jason Miller, going back and forth between him and Brad Douriff, I was like, is that just like a concession to get Jason Miller back in the film? I don't know. Anyways, it doesn't 100% work for me, but it has a lot of great elements and some iconic scenes. So 3 Bill Blatties for me.
3 Billy Fatty Blatties from Chris. That's our show for this week. But before we go, we do have a review to read. Mike, you got that pulled up here? You want to read that review?
I do have it pulled up. And this is from familiar name, Bubba Hotep.
Ooh,
Good film.
we should do it on the show.
Good job on grabbing that handle.
I think it has been requested through cultfilmandreview.com.
It definitely has.
where you
Yes.
can get all your requests in. Again, that's cultfilmandreview.com.
Guys, this is a 5-star review. It says great podcast with 4 exclamation points. So
And
everybody
that's the
else that
title?
said great podcast, you're 4 times less the fucking
he
great
just-
podcast.
he-
Is that an
This guy
exclamation
has.
point for each cult member here at the table?
I like to think so.
That's my dream.
And he says, awesome show, guys. Really love the movie reviews and all the interesting information you provide. But he says, guys, please do a review for The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Ooh,
Okay.
yeah, I've thought about that one.
I think, Kyle, you have mentioned that several times.
Yeah.
Yep.
We should do it.
You never know when that one will be coming up. Thank you for the review, Bubba Hotep. We really appreciate that. Guys, if you want to shout out at the end of the show, please head over to iTunes and leave us a review. It really helps us climb those charts. And we all know how important that is. And then do us a favor, head over to cultfilmandreview.com. Make sure you check out the latest episode, pick up a t-shirt, do all that fun stuff. And then Phoenix Film Bar, we're coming at you. September 13th for The Burning. They can get tickets where, Chris?
TheFilmBarPHX.com.
That is right. Make sure you follow us on social media. Is what I sound like right now. Facebook, we're on there. Check us out. Cult Film and Review. Just search that. You'll be able to find us. And then if you want to check us out on Instagram, we're Cult Film and Review. At Cult Film and Review.
Fancy that.
We're making it hard for you. Here's where things get a little dicey. If you're going to follow us on Twitter, just make sure you follow @cultfilm_review. And then you'll be able to follow us on Twitter And then when you're done with that, you can follow Kyle.
You can follow me on Instagram at cultfilm_Kyle.
You can follow Chris.
Cultfilm_Chris on Instagram.
And you can follow Mike.
On Twitter at Mike Salustio.
And you can follow me at VHS Collect on Snapchat and Instagram. That's our show for this week. Remember, if you're going to join a cult, make sure they watch good movies. We'll see you next time.